Hello and good morning. Today I'm going to discuss market environment and Porter's forces. We did this in the examination where there was an article about Middle East gamers, believed to be over 100 million, multi-billion dollar industry, and an enthusiastic audience. The script for gaming in the GCC writers itself, a recent report, Frost and Sullivan, and the questions which were asked in the article, rather following the article, were identify the business environment and market structure gaming industry operates in. So the answers that I was looking for was a choice from pure competition or perfect competition, monopolistic, oligopoly, and monopoly. Now we have to understand that many people answered saying perfect competition or pure competition. The first condition for pure competition, perfect competition is that price is the only factor which actually drives the market. There is no differentiation in the product itself or the service itself, and that is why it's a perfect competition. So if you didn't know a brand name, you could be buying any particular product, which is like as in the case of commodities. However, we cannot have or consider the gaming industry as being perfect competition because the companies have different features and which is more in terms of monopolistic. Monopolistic, the offerings are the same, but the features are different. And why I always give the example of airlines is for you to understand that when we say monopolistic, it is not so cheap, and price is not the only factor which is actually driving the market. Some people chose to answer as oligopoly. Again, oligopoly usually has only two or three players. We talk about steel industry or aluminum industry or airline manufacturers where there are very few people playing the market. Monopoly, of course, everybody understands and nobody used that example. So please, once more, think about it. If you have a case study in front of you asking you about the market structure and business environment, then do think about the fact that what drives the market. Some people also consider the pestle factors, which is very good. But when you consider the pestle factors, again, perfect competition or pure competition does not have many political or legal bindings as much as what an oligopoly or a monopoly market would have. The next set of question was regarding the Porter's five forces. So let us start with barriers to entry or threat of new entrants. It can be called either ways. So apart from money, capital which is required, you also need to look at what are the legal bindings. Obviously, it is very difficult to get into a telecom industry. It is not so difficult to get into a gaming industry. So the threat would be medium. Important point to note while discussing Porter's forces is invariably people tend to forget that they are the company in the industry. So you could be Xbox or PlayStation in the gaming industry. Now, when you look at the threat of entrance, that means you need to look at how difficult it is for people to enter into your industry. When you look at barrier to entry, you also have to think about how easy is it to exit. Like I always keep saying, if you build up a factory for manufacturing car, you need to have at least, even for manufacturing one car, you need to have the full factory operational. And hence, after making manufacturing 10 cars, if you decide to close the company, that is actually not possible. Then we have what we call as the threat of suppliers. When the suppliers are few, then your threat is higher. In gaming industry, the suppliers are okay, there are many, so you can kind of negotiate with them. Now, if the company, Sony or Xbox decide that they can do the manufacturing themselves and they decide to become suppliers, do the function of what the supplier does, start the manufacturing of the parts themselves. That is called as backward integration. So when we look at it, we have to consider that we are not looking just at one supplier for the company. There are so many components and so many parts for which we need a different suppliers. So the threat of backward integration cannot be the same for all the suppliers. Maybe for some you could use the backward supply, but for some you can't. Same way, the threat of consumers. When you have many consumers, then definitely the threat from them is more. When you have many players in the market, in your own industry, the consumer has more option. Of course, they do have to think about switching cost. Again, so we've looked at now at barrier to the threat of new entrants, the threat of suppliers, threat of buyers. We look at threat from the competition. How competitive is the industry? So the pure competition, if somebody is from pure competition, that means there are more number of players in the market and obviously the competition is way higher. Interesting to note that threat of substitutes and threat of competition are two entirely different things. So if you are in the tea industry, then the threat of competition is all tea makers, tea manufacturers. But if you are looking at threat of substitute, right from coffee to cold water to any juices, everything can be a substitute. So do think about it. For gaming, all the people who are in the gaming, providing gaming, they are all part of the threat of competition. But alternatives, threat of substitute is, so if this person is not doing gaming for entertainment and passing their time, what else are they doing? Maybe watching television or maybe playing some other games which are on the mobile. Maybe they're actually reading. Anything else can be a substitute. They could be using a Kindle reader or an e-reader. Anything else could be a substitute. So how much is the threat from the substitute? Again, threat from competition, threat from substitutes are two different things. When you are writing this, you have to consider that you are talking about the company and what kind of a threat the company is facing. So just saying low to high is not enough. You have to elaborate on why it is low or why it is high. Thank you very much for this. And now I'll stop this recording. Have a good day.